Hey y'all, it's Jennifer. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am coming to you kind of with a themed reading vlog. I thought that I would do a reading vlog today that was centered around one of my most anticipated releases for the year. I saw Yoon from Dokyu Yoon last year. She did a series like this on her channel where essentially she vlogged each one of her anticipated releases, which I just thought was so smart and I just thought sounded really fun to record your thoughts on an anticipated release as you're reading it. And I really enjoy doing vlogs that are centered around one single book. The anticipated release that I'm going to be reading in today's vlog is Atalanta by Jennifer Saint. I think if you had asked me last year if I ever thought a Jennifer Saint book would be an anticipated release for me, I really don't know that I would have thought that I was capable of that, because I was genuinely disappointed in Ariadne. I think Ariadne was just not for me, but Electra last year was one of my favorite books of the year. It's certainly one of my favorite Greek retellings, but I'm very familiar with the subject matter of Electra and Clytemnestra. And so I just wondered if, since that was essentially my favorite myth being retold, if I was just set up to like that book. And so this is her newest book. It is about Atalanta, which is also kind of a Greek myth retelling. Atalanta, to my understanding, is Jennifer Saint's favorite mythological figure. And so I think this is going to be a very personal book to her as an author. And so I'm really excited to see how this goes. If you don't know anything about Atalanta, she's known for being really, really fast. She lived with the goddess Artemis, and so she's really, really fast. She's kind of a huntress as well. And she also went on the Argo. She went on the voyage of the Argo with Jason to find the Golden Fleece. And so I think this has the potential to be a really eventful novel. One of the problems that I had with Ariadne as a book is that I thought that it was very, very slow. And I thought that a lot of the events you were really excited to see retold from the myth, she basically glossed over. Basically, to me, at any opportunity to make that book a little bit more pacey, to make it more interesting, I felt like she didn't do that. That was just a very quiet novel, and that is not what I expected. But Electra's story and Atalanta's story are much more action heavy than what Ariadne's winds up being. And so I'm really excited about this. This is kind of third time's the charm for me. But I am really excited about this because Atalanta, it's not as if I would say I dislike her. I am really interested in her. I just would say I don't know very much about her. So I'm really excited about this. I started it this morning and I am really enjoying it so far. I will say, I think I'm about 15-20% of the way in. I think if you're not that familiar with Atalanta's story, this first half is going to feel kind of slow, but I personally have really enjoyed it. I really liked the way that she has incorporated other myths into this and allusions to other more famous characters. So I just think this is really interesting so far. I hope that I stay positive with it. I will let you know. Essentially, I think this is going to wind up being a weekend reading vlog because this is not that long of a book and I feel like I can probably fly through it. This afternoon, I'm planning on going to Walmart, so not that exciting, but it is a really nice day out, so I'm excited to get outside, see some flowers in the garden section. I can carry y'all along for that. going to rain today, so the lighting is maybe not that great, but I didn't want to turn on overhead lighting because I'm just not putting in my contacts today. I'm not dealing with them, so I figured it would be better to deal with poor lighting than the glare in my glasses. But went to Walmart, saw some absolutely gorgeous flowers, got a few. We still need some to like fill in, but gosh, their flowers were just absolutely beautiful. That is so great for my mental health to see blooming flowers, one of my favorite things. Then got home, crafted for a good 3 hours. That was also kind of great for my mental health. And then I got to reading. And so I would say I am maybe not to the 50% point of Atalanta, but I am a good chunk of the ways in. And I think what's shocking to me and really what's so joyful about this is that apparently I have basically forgotten every single thing that I knew about the voyage of the Argonaut. And so a lot of this feels very new to me. For example, I just didn't realize how many people who were recognizable names were on the voyage of the Argo. I remembered Heracles was there, but I did not at all remember that Peleus, who is Achilles' father, I didn't remember that he was there. Orpheus is there. Basically everybody who is anybody goes on the voyage of the Argo. And I just think it's always interesting when you think about Greek mythology is that you think about a lot of these stories as being very separate things. And you don't think about the people from each one of these myths ever interacting with one another. But that's exactly what goes on 90% of the time. Like everyone is in some way related, or they at least have met. I am also currently reading the Metamorphoses by Ovid. I'm reading that with Faith in Books. And that's been interesting too, because there's been quite a bit of that I have forgotten. Ovid is very cynical in a way that I did not recall, and I think Faith has pointed that out multiple times. I think that has really interfered with her enjoyment of it, is just how very pessimistic and depressing any of the interactions with the gods are. And this book does not shy away from that either. What I really like, and what I have to say I appreciate about all of Jennifer Saint's works, is that she really does approach it from kind of an area of female rage in a way that I think is very relatable in the modern day. Certainly the stories of Electra and Clytemnestra, they are stories of female rage. I mean, definitely they are. But I didn't really realize how much Atalanta was going to interact with themes of female rage. And a lot of it is not specific to her as a character. It's that she has been introduced to other women who have gone through something really terrible, specifically at the hands of the gods. For example, in basically the first chapter of the book, she knows Callisto, who is someone who was assaulted by Zeus. And because the rules of Artemis are basically you can't be with a man ever, you can't interact with a man, even though it was against her will, Artemis still punishes her for it. And I think that's where the disconnect comes, and that's one of the more interesting discussions the book wants to have, is that even other women are not going to help you 9 times out of 10 in a society that is designed like this. So I just think it's very thematically interesting. I think the book is much deeper than I expected it to be. I'm really enjoying that. And I am really enjoying the plot now because it's really kicked off. And because I don't really remember anything about Atalanta or specifically the voyage of the Argo, I'm having a lot of fun. And last night, I almost wanted to look up Atalanta and specifically Jason and the Argonauts. And I didn't do it because I just think that's a lot of my enjoyment right now, is that I kind of am feeling fear for everyone on the voyage. It's not been that long ago, I want to say maybe in 2021, that I reread Jason and the Argonauts, which is an ancient Greek poem about the voyage of the Argo. And I think I reread it in a more modern translation. I do not know why I can't remember that for the life of me. I can remember Medea, and that's who I'm most excited to see. Where is she? Where is Queen Medea? I love her, I'm sorry. I love all of these unhinged women in Greek mythology. So I guess that's probably the part of it that I'm more familiar with. And when we get to kind of that stage, I'm gonna be on better footing in terms of what's going on. But so far, I'm really enjoying this. I have to say, I really do think Jennifer Saint's writing has improved. I don't know how much of it is that this is now her 3rd novel, or if some of it is, as she's expressed in interviews, Atalanta is her favorite mythological figure. And so I think she really does want to do her justice. The positive experiences that I have had with Electra and now that I am having currently with Atalanta really do make me want to go back to Ariadne, because I think maybe I just wasn't in the mood for it. So maybe after I finish this, I'll reread Ariadne. I just think I've loved her other stuff. I should have loved that. And Ariadne is one of my favorite mythological women. And maybe then I was hard on her, but I love Electra. Electra and Clytemnestra are my two favorites. And I thought she did fantastically with them last year. And I personally think the handling of Atalanta has been really wonderful so far. So I am just really loving this. And I will update you when I reach maybe the 75% mark. So I have hit around the 65-70% mark in Atalanta, and I am still just really enjoying it. I am really, really loving it. I don't think it's going to get 5 stars from me. Electra didn't, and I would say I am not enjoying this as much as I did Electra, but I do have a couple of, maybe not complaints, just observations that I am having about the writing. And one of the things that I think is interesting and that I think she's had to take a lot of liberties with as an author is that Atalanta's story feels very piecemeal. I think the other women that she has focused on in other novels have had kind of a cohesive story around one period of their life, let's say. And so it was easy to structure a novel around one key event. Whereas with Atalanta, I think she is known for several different things, being raised by the bears, the voyage of the Argo, and most famously, the foot race for her marriage. Those all happen at different times in her life, and they happen when she is surrounded by different people. And so from what I can really remember of Atalanta's story, I think that Jennifer Saint has done a lot of blending of time periods of her life. I think she's blended a lot of this stuff together, which I think makes sense and I think was necessary. And so on the one hand, I mean, I see what she's doing there. On the other, I think a lot of people who are big fans of Atalanta maybe won't like this. I don't know. I think it's interesting because always when there is a Greek myth retelling that's new, that's coming out, you always have these people arguing about what is the true version of the myth, as if there is such a thing. And that is something that Faith of Faith in Books and I, that's something that we've observed when talking about Ovid's Metamorphoses. He is telling a certain version of the myth, but it is also not the be-all, end-all. And so I always think it's interesting when a new Greek myth retelling is published and people start talking about what is the truth and what is the real version of the myth, because you can interpret these things in multiple different ways. And there are also many different tellings of the same myth in the ancient sources. And so I am really enjoying this ride. And a lot of my enjoyment, I really do feel, is coming from the fact that I don't remember a whole lot about Atalanta. And specifically, what I apparently can't remember much of is the overall voyage of the Argo. I basically remember Medea and that's it. And so this has been like reading something brand new to me. But at the same time, I think it's interesting that what I do remember of the story, I think she has blended together very interestingly. Something that I'm gonna say actually is a real complaint from me, but I really don't know how Jennifer Saint could have done this differently, is that it's told from first person. I mean, the book is called Atalanta. And so even if the book was in third person, you would think it would be kind of a third person that was centered on her exclusively. And so I see why this stuff happens, but because it is in first person, for Atalanta to know everything that is going on in any given scene, and thus for us as the reader to know what is going on, to get context for what's going to happen next, she constantly has to be like sneaking around and spying on people, listening in on other people's conversations, watching things, because there are things she chooses not to do, but she still wants to know what's going on. And so she kind of sneaks around a bit. She listens in on conversations. And I just feel like it's a weird way to get information that is clearly imperative for us to know. I think the reason for that is that Jennifer Saint is assuming you probably don't have maybe not a thorough background knowledge of Greek mythology, but that you don't remember everything, which is true for me, and I'm sure is true for a lot of people. And so she kind of goes off on these little info dumping passages where she'll explain what happened to Prometheus, what happened to Persephone, because it is relevant for a one-off line or something that randomly happens for you to have that background knowledge. That is not what I mind. I think that's probably needed, especially for people who don't read a lot of Greek myth or Greek myth retellings. What I think is weird is just how many times, I think it's been at least 3 times at this point, that Atalanta has like snuck around and tried to listen in on other conversations and watched someone else. But as I also said, I really don't know what the alternative would have been for us to know what was going on, for us to get context for what was going on. I don't know what the alternative was when it's a first person narrative. And so that's just one of the things that's irritated me, but for the most part, I have really enjoyed it. I do feel like it's very fast paced, and in some cases, I think I really want more time focused on certain scenes. And I think in certain times, I also want a little bit more from the prose. And so we'll see how I feel. Right now, I'm feeling really positively. I think what's really great about this is that the retelling has been made something unique and something new and different, which is what is really exciting to me and is really what I'm looking for in a retelling. If I wanted to hear the same old story again and again and again, I would read the same retelling. And so I really am interested to see authors put their spin on an old tale, and I really think this has been unique. Well, I have finished Atalanta, and I have to say, I have very, very positive feelings towards it overall. I do think the first half was stronger than the second. And I think if I'm going to judge it against Jennifer Saint's other books, I still think Electra is her best. And I think Electra is probably the one I would suggest someone start with. On a character level, I don't know that Atalanta was that likable to me. And I mean that basically because I don't know that I felt she had any character outside of the plot. I felt like she was just somebody who was moving around observing other things. And there was a lot of us being told this is what she was capable of doing, and then rarely being shown it. Or when we were shown it, it felt like it was glossed over in a sentence or a short paragraph. Basically, in many ways, I think there was a lot of opportunity to make the book longer and to let us really sink into these moments and really grapple with the character dynamics and really get invested in a lot of the character dynamics. And I feel like at every opportunity to do that, she kind of moved on from it rather quickly. And I'm guessing that's just because so much happened in Atalanta's life that it felt pertinent to her to make sure that she encompassed everything in a short amount of time. And I respect that, and I think it was done very, very well. And I think she did a lot to make it feel like a more cohesive story. Without spoilers, there are people who are important to Atalanta's story towards kind of the end of her life. And that's basically all they appear in the myth. And in this novel, Jennifer Saint had them appear earlier in the narrative, so it felt like Atalanta already had kind of a rapport with them, and so I think that was really interesting. I also thought it was really interesting how Jennifer Saint treated different versions of Atalanta's myth. It was talked about in the world, in the story, as if, oh, people say this about you, but I'm guessing it's not true, when we know that is another version of the myth from another ancient source. This was definitely one of my most anticipated books of the year. I really loved it, but I do think I'm constantly wanting something a little bit extra from Jennifer Saint that she's not giving me. I'm interested to know, because I believe she sold these in a 3-book deal. I am interested to see what else she does. Is she going to stick in the realm of Greek mythology or just in general mythology retellings? But this experience was so positive for me, Electra was so positive for me, that I feel like I now really need to go back to Ariadne, and I really need to look at that with fresh eyes. I know this was kind of a different vlog from me, but I had fun filming it. I hope you really enjoyed it. I would love to know what you thought of Atalanta down below. I would love to know what you think of Jennifer Saint in general. I know that there are a lot of contentious opinions out there about her, but I kind of enjoy her. I think I really, really like her. And so this was a great experience for me, around 4 stars. I really loved it. But that's going to be all from me today. I hope you're all having a great week. Happy reading. Goodbye.